here such that we can capture your presence. So for now, allow me invite NUP to introduce yourselves, and then I'll make my communication.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members of the Joint Committee. My name is David Lewis Rubongoya, and I'm the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform. I'm here with...
Good morning, Honorable Chair and the committee members, comrades around. My name is Harriet Chemtai, and I'm the Chairperson of the Election Management Committee, NUP.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members of the committee. My name is Sas Marvin. I am the Secretary for Diaspora Affairs in the National Unity Platform.
Yeah. Okay, let me now make my communication before I invite you to make your presentation. Colleagues, members of the committee, our stakeholders, I wish to take this opportunity to welcome you to this meeting. We continue with the consideration of the protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026, a bill that has attracted a lot of attention from the public and stakeholders for both the good reasons and bad reasons. We as a committee, we commenced our work on Thursday last week, and we committed to Ugandans that we will give this bill enough time. There are fears of hurrying the process. I wish to allay the fears of stakeholders who think that the process is being hurried. We will make sure we listen to all stakeholders who have expressed interest. And as I stated the other day, we will be here today until we ensure that all stakeholders who have expressed interest are listened to. Our procedure is, after listening to stakeholders' views, we retreat as a committee to consider each and every view that has been mentioned by a stakeholder to ensure that we give a balanced approach to consideration of the stakeholder views, and of course with the aim of producing a good law. So issues and worries of hurry should not arise. Stakeholders, because there are so many, we will just beg your indulgence that when you come to take the floor, you go straight to the gist of the matters. If you can help us by going clause by clause, tell us your concern and proposals on how you think we should treat such a clause, that would be so nice. Of course, there are those who are calling for complete rejection of the bill. Then you quickly give your justification. That would also be acceptable. What we urge you is not to go into unnecessary background, because the background to this bill has been mentioned. The impact of the bill to the economy has been well articulated. The impact of the bill to the ordinary persons has been well articulated. So let's just go straight to the issues. Clause 1, we have such an issue, we propose ABCD. Clause 2, we have such an issue, we propose ABCD, such that we can quickly capture your concerns. I think, as I proposed, it will be, we shall use the system of first in, first out. And again, we apologize for inviting you at the same time. But again, that's the easiest way of dealing with the numbers that we have. Colleagues, I thank you for coming. And as we did on Friday, I beg your indulgence for a very long day. We might be here up to 6 or 7 like we did on Friday. And so we brace ourselves for a very long day. Clerks, ensure that our table of eats is fully loaded, such that as soon as the eats arrive, I will invite our stakeholders to a cup of tea, and of course the members, to ensure that we're energized throughout the day. With those few remarks, I wish to, unless there is a reaction to my communication, I wish to invite, yes, Honorable Jonathan Odur.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your communication. I have some concerns about your communication. First is that the order of business of this committee, except for today, has not been circulated. You will appreciate that in our ordinary business of Parliament, we sit from Tuesdays up to Thursdays. Mondays and Fridays are usually reserved. But where there are probably important business we are summoned. I was in Lira. I had to come back for today's sitting of the committee, which only has business of today. It doesn't tell us what will happen tomorrow, Tuesday, or Wednesday, or the entire week. Mr. Chairman, fuel is actually very costly now. So when I leave and travel that distance, I want to have full business of the week. Now I want to contrast that with your communication. You say, we are here for today. And I listen carefully, your choice of today. And all the witnesses will be entertained. I want to ask you, when you tell the witnesses that you hurry, give us the gist of your presentation. Do it quickly. The rest were well articulated. Why have you invited them here? To articulate what? And who is that person who had well articulated the issue? So for me, I think the witnesses who are here should be given ample time to explain themselves. We should not approach them with any biasness. We are a committee which is supposed to be impartial, so we listen to them. So the two things, as I react to you, is one, to pronounce yourself on the order of business. I do not want to fall in the trap of being ambushed that the committee report is now ready. Probably. It affects the members' right, my right, in case I want to dissent from the main report, which is now a practice here in Parliament, that you are just ambushed in the morning and say the order paper is ready, you come and present, and we don't have time, and you are technical staff here are usually very hostile to us members when you request them to do a minority report. So at what point are you going to conclude the majority report by way of schedule? And then at what point are members who may wish to dissent be given opportunity to dissent? So I want you to be clear so that we know going forward what is the schedule for tomorrow. Are we going to listen to more witnesses? I personally received communication from witnesses that have submitted they would like to come. So can you guide the general public that we have up to Friday or up the next 2 weeks to listen to witnesses, and there we shall close, other than this disguised public participation? Thank you.
Honorable Jonathan, this is not disguised. This is a public participation within the rules of Parliament. Now, commenting on your concerns, the first one is the issue of the order of business of the committee. You raised this matter on our WhatsApp forum. I'm sorry I didn't respond yesterday. I think I was engaged with weekend issues. I now direct the clerks to capture all these stakeholders who have raised the interest in appearing, such that then you do a program for the entire week, such that we can know approximately when we might be through with the stakeholders. But make sure at least a minimum of 12 stakeholders in a day. And that program should be posted to our WhatsApp program by end of today, such that we can be able to help members plan their week. But the issue is that we are not here for only today. We are here for today, tomorrow, the other day, until we are done with all the stakeholders. If by the end of today the clerks report that there are no more stakeholders, we will announce that we have concluded with the stakeholder consultations. But as far as I know, we are not even halfway so far, if I may, from what I heard. The stakeholders are so many, so it might be going on the whole week. But clerks do the program and flash it on our, and then that program will be shared to the public as well. And then the issue of asking the stakeholders to hurry, I have not asked anyone to hurry. I've only told you that try to be straight to the point. It does not help meandering. Just go straight to the issue. If the issues are so many, you could even take an hour. But when you are straight to the point, that's what I was saying. Just try to be precise. But you have your time. You will not be hurried. We are ready to listen to you and interact with you. No hurry in Africa. That was my teacher of history. He used to tell me, in Africa, there is no hurry. So please feel at home, no hurry. Let's listen to you and take your time to ensure that you deliver your issues. I think with that, I wish now to invite the National Unity Platform. The Honorable Secretary General is here. Kindly take your platform and address us on your memorandum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members. I wish to state from the outset that we are here on Friday, the whole day actually, because we were invited at 10 and we were not able to get that opportunity to present. But nonetheless, we are glad that we have that opportunity now. Maybe next time you should invite people at different times, because everyone comes at 10 and then they have to wait for the whole day. I'll try to keep it brief. We already submitted our memorandum, but I also want to state that we have submitted two documents, one from the party and the other from our diaspora, NUP diaspora, which I will not present, but you have a copy also. So, Honorable Chair and members, I want to address the committee on the objectives of the bill. According to the bill, its primary objective is provide for the protection of the sovereignty of the people of Uganda and provide for the registration and regulation of agents of foreigners, as well as their funding. The bill creates an impression that Uganda and its people lack the necessary laws to uphold their sovereignty. According to the bill's memorandum, Uganda lacks laws that protect its ability to self-govern, and the foreign aid that some members of our civil society receive causes a duplication or conflict with government programs, thereby giving outsiders influence over our country and undermining our right to self-determination. It is also claimed in the bill that foreigners and their agents in Uganda use online platforms to facilitate social discord, and further suggests that civil society organizations funded by foreigners do not operate in accordance with the interests of Uganda. In our humble view, the foregoing representations cannot be any further from the truth. Uganda already has several laws that sufficiently address whatever mischief the bill seeks to cure, and the laws that we have in place stipulate sanctions if violated. Chief among these is the 1995 Constitution, which in Directive Principle 4 and Article 1 guarantee the sovereignty of the people of Uganda. Notwithstanding the unconstitutional nature of some of their provisions, other laws that already address the defects purportedly identified include the Computer Misuse Act, the Anti-Money Laundering Act, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, the Presidential Elections Act, the Parliamentary Elections Act, NGO Act, and among others. You notice, Honorable Chair and members, that, for example, the Political Parties and Organizations Act sets in place how much money a political party can receive in a given year from foreign sources. Ironically, since it regained independence in 1962, Uganda has greatly benefited from the warmth and generosity selflessly extended to it by the international community. That community currently funds nearly half of our recurrent national budget. We've even seen, I think the State Minister for Disaster Preparedness now appealing to countries of the world to come in and support Uganda because of USAID funding gaps. And so you wonder why the government itself thinks that it should be getting foreign funding and yet seeks to block or regulate heavily NGOs, political parties, and other organizations from being able to do the same. More still, the very system of government that Uganda is running today and the architecture of its public service are largely creatures that some international community dismisses, that the bill dismisses as foreigners and seeks to shut out from Uganda's affairs. Yet, if it were not for the intervention of foreigners like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, at the close of the 20th century, Uganda's economy, which the NRM government takes credit for, would probably be doing far worse. We are therefore convinced that the stated objectives of the Protection of Sovereignty Bill are not sincere, and the bill ought to be accordingly withdrawn in its entirety. The National Unity Platform believes that this bill is completely unnecessary. At the outset, I wish to also state that we are concerned. Of course, I've had your assurances, Honorable Chair, but we are concerned about the speed at which this bill is being processed, and we hope that stakeholders will be given sufficient time to give their input, especially because of the implications of such a bill. Now let's look at some of the implications. While ostensibly seeking to protect Uganda's sovereignty, this bill severely limits the ability of Ugandan citizens to exercise or enjoy their fundamental rights and freedoms. It fails to meet the constitutional threshold required for such limitations by Article 43 of our Constitution as below. 1. Whereas on the surface, the bill states in its objectives that it aims at protecting the sovereignty of Uganda and its citizens, it collapses under scrutiny. 1. The bill conflates the interests of a sitting government with the interests of the wider public. This is seen, for example, in clauses such as Clause 2(2)(g) and Clause 8(3), which prohibit citizens from influencing the public to oppose a policy of government and from hindering or disrupting the implementation of government policy, respectively. Honorable Chair, our duty as the opposition, for example, whether we are in Uganda or abroad, is to oppose government policy. That's why we are there as the opposition, to oppose what the present government is doing. What this bill is saying is that if someone is opposed to public policy, and you're a foreigner, and I'll come to that, then you are committing a crime. This bill is essentially criminalizing opposition. We know that in Uganda, opposition has already been criminalized, but once you say, that citizens should not influence public policy or oppose the policy of government, then I think that's extremely unconstitutional. The bill targets conduct that is already regulated by existing laws, as we already submitted above. The public interest apparently claimed in the bill's memorandum, that is, of filling legal gaps, is therefore factually false in the face of the existing laws. C. Several provisions of the bill have no conceivable public interest anchor. For instance, Clause 2(2)(g), which implicitly requires anyone who influences the public to oppose the policy of government to first seek approval of that government, does not, protect any public good. Instead, it shields policy of that government from public criticism, thereby unjustifiably limiting the public's freedom of speech and its right to participate in the affairs of government. This clause alone effectively bans the political opposition, like I've said. Even where such public interest exists, the limitation must not amount to political persecution, and it must be demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society as envisaged by Article 43(2)(a) of the Constitution. For example, in this bill, under clauses 3, 4, 6, 6, 14(1), 15, 16, etc. of the bill, these clauses effectively place entire regulatory and enforcement mechanisms of the bill under the direct control and or guidance of the Minister of Internal Affairs, a political appointee, who is appointed by and answerable to a sitting president. The said clauses grant the minister wide discretion to register, deregister, refuse, suspend, or revoke the operational certificates of anyone deemed to be an agent of a foreigner, with no meaningful procedural safeguards to restrain the existence of that power, the exercise of that power. This exposes opposition politicians, NGOs, investigative journalists, researchers, whistleblowers, and other real and perceived opponents of the minister and his appointing authority to political persecution. Therefore, these limitations are disproportionate and thus unjustifiable. As we have stated above, the objectives stated in the bill do not match the provisions therein enacted. In our view, for example, clauses 5, 3, 7, 4, 8, 3, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 22 of the bill effectively suppress dissent instead of protecting the self-determination of the people of Uganda. We also consider the following clauses to be overly broad and disproportionate for the reasons indicated against each. The definition of a foreigner under clause 1 of the bill is as ridiculous as it is the foundational source of the bill's overbreadth. Every substantive offense in the bill is construed around this definition of a foreigner, meaning that it is disproportionate, that which infects almost every provision. Our view is that once you begin with a definition of a foreigner in that manner, that particular provision affects the rest of the bill, and that is why we oppose it in its entirety. The definition is unconstitutional because, first, it includes Ugandan citizens residing out of Uganda. It means, Mr. Honorable Chair, that if a Ugandan goes on a plane or moves by any other means out of Uganda, that person at that point has become a foreigner. How ridiculous. This provision is unconstitutional. It renders these people foreigners in their own country by their mere fact of physical location abroad. The presupposition is that maybe they should even abandon their passports. That once you move out of Uganda, even if you have a Ugandan passport, at that point you've become a foreigner. Any Ugandan in the diaspora who sends money to their family or funds a political campaign or communicates political views to relatives at home is considered a foreigner. And thus, whoever is based in Uganda who wishes to deal with him or her requires ministerial permission. Second, and most critically, the definition empowers a minister to declare any person or body a foreigner. This delegation grants a minister open-ended power to expand the definition of a foreigner to capture any individual organization at will without any defined criteria. Such a definition, which can be expanded by ministerial decree at any time, provides no legal certainty whatsoever, thereby violating the right to a fair trial and the principle of legality. It is also ridiculous because it implies that even government officials who go out of the country on official duties automatically become foreigners who are then forbidden to conduct the business of the state. Now, clause 5.3, in which the phrase interests of Uganda is undefined. So one of the problems with this bill, Honorable Chair, and why we think it should be thrown out, is the nature in which it defines or it sets principles very, very broadly and therefore subjects them to abuse at any point. Consider 5.3, in which the phrase interests of Uganda. Who defines what interests of Uganda are? You know, it renders the related offense vague. This violates citizens' right to free speech and association, because everybody will be asking themselves if what I'm going to say, whether what I'm going to say is contrary to the interests of Uganda or not, because who defines what the interests of Uganda amounts to? Clause 6.1 and 2 require cabinet approval before any person performs functions ordinarily the responsibility of government, as listed in the 6th schedule to the Constitution, cripple legitimate NGO service delivery in sectors like health and education, in disproportionate violation of citizens' freedom of association, right to work, civic participation, etc. Clause 7.3 criminalizes policy development without cabinet approval. Can you imagine? Thus effectively outlawing opposition manifestos, academic policy work, research, which is disproportionate violation of citizens' freedom of expression, thought, and opinion. Clause 8.3 prohibits acts that hinder or disrupt government policy implementation without necessarily requiring unlawfulness or harm. Left as it is, this clause converts such actions as democratic opposition, litigation, and even journalism into criminal conduct, which constitutes a disproportionate violation of the freedom of expression and the freedom of assembly. Clause 11.2 prohibits foreign-linked influence over our elections. Honorable Chair, that's very, very problematic. Now, when you read that and compare it to the definition of the foreigner in clause 1, and then the bill is saying that, you know, foreigners should not influence our elections. And these foreigners include Ugandans in the diaspora. So does that mean that Ugandans in the diaspora should now not have a say in how elections are run? In any case, the High Court of Uganda has already declared that Ugandans in the diaspora should be given an opportunity to even vote. But as you know, that right has not been implemented by the Electoral Commission and other agencies. So it's ridiculous to say that if a foreigner is, you know, influencing elections in Uganda, and then with that broad definition of a foreigner, it is very, very problematic. This tantamount to disenfranchisement and violation of citizens' right to vote and participation in electoral processes. Clause 12.1 prohibits any meeting aimed at interfering with government operations without establishing a threshold for when such a meeting would become unlawful. Effectively outlaws opposition political rallies, trade union activities, etc., in violation of freedoms protected by Articles 29(1)(a) and D and 43 of the Constitution of Uganda. Clause 13 makes it an offense for anyone to publish any information, even if it may be true, or participate in any act that weakens or damages the economic system or viability of the country, causing economic disruption, insecurity, or instability. How do you define this? It is so broad that the government will wake up one day and choose to interpret it in any way it desires. Besides being vague, this provision suppresses journalism and political criticism, which disproportionately violates citizens' right to speak freely and access to information, as well as Article 43 itself, as no legitimate democratic society criminalizes truthful publication. Clause 22.1 imposes a funding cap of 400 million per 12 months on affected organizations, and that is likely to cripple activities of such organizations as opposed to encouraging them. You know, Honorable Chair, for example, the National Unity Platform irregularly has been prohibited from getting public funds that it ordinarily should be entitled to. That's a debate for another day. So what this bill is saying is that NUP as a political party should not be receiving funding of this magnitude, you know, from what it is defining as a foreigner. Effectively, you're saying we have crippled you internally and even crippled your probable sources. You know, if Ugandans in the diaspora collect money collectively and want to send it in one go, this bill says that is a crime being committed. So, which again makes the intentions of the bill suspect. Clause 23.1, which defines disruptive activities to include participation in demonstrations, retrospectively declared unlawful, imposes a chilling effect on political expression and civil society. You know, everybody knows that in this country, you cannot, as an opposition party, write to the police seeking to demonstrate in Kampala and you get clearance, even when the law does not require that you get clearance. So, in other words, demonstrations in Uganda have practically been rendered unlawful, every kind. But now, this bill is saying that any encouragement of demonstrations, you know, by a foreigner is unconstitutional, is criminalized. So, this violates the freedoms of assembly and association as well as Uganda's obligations under regional and international charters. Further, there is no rational connection between the harsh penalties proposed in the bill and protecting Uganda's sovereignty, as a means the bill chooses to do so are grossly disproportionate to the ends it purportedly seeks to achieve. We accordingly find these penalties ridiculous. Clause 5.4 proposes a fine of up to 2 billion or 20 years imprisonment, or both, for promoting interests of a foreigner, which again has not been defined. Clause 6.4 proposes a fine of up to 2 billion or 20 years imprisonment, or both, for exercising government functions without approval. Clause 7.4 proposes a fine of 2 billion or 20 years imprisonment, or both, for developing policy without cabinet approval. Other clauses in this category are 10.2, 11.3, 12.2, 13, 14, 22, 26, etc. Even if one were to assume that the objectives and provisions of the bill are legitimate, which are not, the penalties proposed by these clauses are nevertheless excessive, high-handed, and suspicious altogether. Rather than using the most minimal options available to limit the rights of Ugandan citizens in pursuit of its stated objectives of protecting our sovereignty, the bill instead resorts to the most restrictive options, such as criminal prosecution with very long prison sentences and steep fines. Yet less restrictive means would have served the stated purpose, and in fact our argument is that the present laws do that. In conclusion, the Protection of Sovereignty Bill is unconstitutional and dangerous in its implications for democratic governance in Uganda. Its alleged objective of protecting Uganda's sovereignty is not only undermined by the existence of adequate legislation already in place, but it also directly contradicts the bill's operative provisions, which systematically dismantle the very fabric of civic, political, and associational rights and freedoms through which the people of Uganda meaningfully exercise their sovereignty. The bill concentrates unchecked executive power in the Ministry of Internal Affairs and criminalizes ordinary democratic participation. It imposes penalties too severe to be considered merely regulatory and defines foreigner in such an absurd and expansive manner that renders every substantive provision anchored on the definition to be constitutionally defective. We accordingly call upon the committee to reject the bill in its entirety and recommend its withdrawal to the House. The National Unity Platform, I've seen some people say that this bill definitely targets the opposition right now as it is, especially because of our engagement with the Ugandan diaspora, and because the present government has tried and done everything possible to limit the operations of, for example, the National Unity Platform internally. So when they see Honorable Kyagulanyi, our president, addressing the EU Parliament on what has gone wrong in Uganda, they feel that they need to bring such a law. Our advice to them would be to correct what has gone wrong. Instead of trying to come up with all these laws to criminalize every legitimate political participation and activities of the opposition, let them do the right thing. Let them ensure that elections are free and fair. Let them stop abductions. Let them ensure that Ugandans can enjoy their freedoms and rights as enshrined under the Constitution. If they do that, there will be no need, for the opposition to even do what we are doing. But this law, as it is persecutorial in nature. It is intended to persecute and not to achieve any other objective. I thank you. And again, we have submitted both our own and also a memorandum from the diaspora. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Comrade Lewis. For the presentation. Now, honorable colleagues, because the Secretary General has presented the memorandum on behalf of the party, I trust the one from the diaspora is for submission for consideration onwards, not presentation.
Yeah, we don't have a copy.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a copy of the memorandum from the diaspora.
Does our Secretariat have it? Please make copies and distribute to the honorable members. Now, honorable colleagues, let's weigh in with the National Unity Platform, seek clarification, guidance, information, questions, so that we allow another team to make a presentation.
But Chair, before that, when we sat here on Friday, the substantive chair of the committee had indicated that arrangements were being made for the diaspora to present to us virtually, and then we would engage them. I don't know if that is still the position from our side, because they are ready to present and would like to engage them, or that opportunity is now closed.
I have not received any communication which closes it. The difference with this one is that this is okay. I've been informed by my clerk that we will have it tomorrow. But this is specifically National Unity Platform diaspora team. The other one is a wider concept involving many players in and outside the political players. So let's weigh in. We'll start with the Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi.
Thank you, Chair, for your procedure.
Procedure.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the Honorable Nsibambi here is scheduled to present from the other side. Through you, I'm aware that he's a member of Parliament. Chair, I want to know whether it is procedurally okay, and if he's trying to enrich his submissions through asking the other side, our witnesses, and enrich his his submission yet to be presented. I want to know whether it is procedurally okay for him to now start asking our witnesses, yet he's supposed to also present his people from the other side.
Honorable colleagues, we very well know that any member of parliament can sit in any proceedings of any committee. Those are the rules. And so the Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi, in as far as I know, is a member of parliament representing the people of Mawokota.
Chair, my issue is, it's like when after him submitting here and becoming a witness the other side, that now he'll turn into the house and start submitting, yet he was here and presented his views here. My point here is, he has been scheduled to present from the other side. Are we proceeding well to allow him now to start asking questions?
My ruling is that as a sitting member of parliament, he has every right to participate in the affairs of any committee that sits in parliament. So he is rightly in the place. Please, Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi, proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair, for your kind indulgence. I just have one question, actually not a question, clarification. I want to tap the Harvard brain also. And I'm very sure it's not in bad faith. Honorable SCG, I just want to seek your interpretation of Article 8A of the Constitution. You've, in your paper, talked about public interest. I can just read it briefly. 8A, 8A, subsection 1 and 2, or clause 1 and 2. Uganda, under 1, shall be governed based on the principles of national interest and common good enshrined in the national objectives and directives of the principles of state. 2. Parliament shall make relevant laws for the purposes of giving full effect to the clause 1 of this article. Then, under Directive 4, which you've cited of the Constitution, 1, 2, and 3, the state and citizens of Uganda shall at all times defend the independence, then sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Uganda. 2. The state, highlight that word, the state and citizens of Uganda shall endeavor to build national strength in political, economic, and social spheres to avoid undue dependence on other countries and institutions. And 3, the state, again highlight the state, shall endeavor to mobilize, organize, and empower Ugandan people to build independent and sustainable foundation for the development of Uganda. In light of this bill, what is the role of the state? Because you said it should be thrown out. But under Article 8A, we have to make laws to ensure the protection of this interest. So what is the role of the state looking at this bill?
Thank you. The Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi, I'm glad you acknowledge the strength of the Harvard brain, and it's courteous that you seek clarification. Honorable Keo.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to thank the Right Honorable SG for the presentation. I wanted to draw his attention to his paper on page 3 and subheading, the limitations do not serve the legitimate public interest. And when you come to A, where actually you say that is people may come out and oppose, and you clearly stated that actually the opposition is supposed to make sure that mobilizes the citizens from influencing the public to oppose the policy of government. One of the policies of the government is UPE, is PDM. I wanted you to put clarity on this. Actually, that the opposition we should oppose PDM that brings people money into people's pockets. I wanted you to put more light on this, UPE, because you are saying that actually when we should oppose government policies.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Keo. You know, Honorable Keo is from the islands, so put that into consideration when you're responding. Who is next? Honorable David Livingstone Zijani.
Mine is exactly what Okeo's concern was, but for the record, I'll put it in my own words. First, I must commend the eloquence of the Secretary General.
The Honorable Fox is not appreciating that. Please, give credit where it's due.
For the Secretary General's comfort, as I was coming into the gate, we came in together with Honorable Mulima Mayuni, Honorable here on my left, and he saw the color of my shirt, and he said, all along you subscribe to this party. And I said, but this color existed before parties came. I am the Dean of Independence in the House, so please know that I am very independent. So I think that while your presentation is wonderful and it really captures my admiration, I also get concerned when you say your goal is to oppose government policy. This, as he has stated, implies that even if government says we will bring national insurance, health insurance for all, you will oppose. Universal education, you will oppose, because the goal of your existence is to oppose. And so, it then makes me jittery to the subsequent presentations you make and the indictments to the different clauses, because I'm thinking, okay, you would oppose anyway. So it doesn't necessarily mean that these are negative or injurious to society. You're simply doing your job, which is to oppose. So if you might want to revisit that particular statement, it would be helpful to me.
What is your question, Honorable Zijani?
My question, actually mine wasn't a question, it was seeking clarification.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Is that part of what we can do?
Yeah,
seeking
sure,
clarification?
Sure.
Yes, I was.
Thank you. Odoi Benadonin.
Thank you, Chair. I want to draw the attention of the Secretary General of NUP to page 2, item 3. And the wording is, notwithstanding the unconstitutional nature of some of their provisions. My interpretation of this is that you actually agree with some of the provisions in the bill. In your presentation, you conveniently omitted any mention of some of the provisions, which I think you indicated under this line. Is this, as you did say, merely opposing or selective criticism? Yet I know part of your work or role is actually to scrutinize and then improve on a matter before you in this committee. So would you please come out of the blanket rejection and actually spell out the provisions where the interpretation of this were indicated some of the provisions. Thank you.
If any. Let's have the last one. Yes or no? Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Mine is goes to the Secretary General of NUP. First of all, I appreciate for your presentation, but mine goes on the issue of diaspora. I would like to bring it to the attention, the Secretary General of NUP, that actually it's not only NUP which has a support base in the diaspora. All the parties, political parties, they have support base in the diaspora. So the law will not only affect NUP, but it will affect across the board. For example, NRM has even a directorate of in its secretariat in charge of diaspora. So NUP, I want to arrange your fears that this law is only affecting you. So it will affect the whole across the board of all political parties.
That's order. That's the Honorable Reuben Arinitwe. He has allayed his fears. I had given Sechitoleko before the Honorable Reuben came in. Sechitoleko, do you want to oppose your Secretary General?
No, sir.
Okay.
Someone that Uganda.
Procedure, Honorable Chair.
Procedure?
Honorable, I am aware, Honorable Chair, that Honorable Sechi, my wonderful neighbor here, sat at the Secretariat of NUP to draft the position the Secretary General has just presented before us. Is he therefore proceeded in order to make further submissions after his eloquent Secretary General has presented?
Thank you, Honorable Fox. The Honorable Sechitoleko will make his submissions as a member of the committee. It's actually his right. Please go on.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, for the wise ruling. And I need your protection, Chair.
Still protected.
Oh, Sergeant, at home to be near here because I'm not safe. Honorable Chair and colleague members, Robert Sekitoleko and maybe our visitors. Robert Sekitoleko is my name, a member of Parliament, Bamunanika County, Ruero District. I'm a member of National Unity Platform, the Almighty Party. Just to thank Almighty, just to thank my Secretary General for the submission and the breakdown of issues per issue. On behalf of Ugandans who are there, because now we are their voice, thank you for coming up with the voice of somewhere, somehow. And I think with this submission, the government will think twice as you have pledged.
Honorable Sechitoleko.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Sechitoleko. Okay, I think now we can give the right Honorable Secretary. Oh, our senior member here will wrap it up from this side. We agree that I'm not giving any other person a chance this side after the Honorable Katuntu.
Well, thank you, Chair. The Secretary General alludes to legitimate and illegitimate intentions. I would like to limit myself to the legitimate ones, because illegitimacy sometimes becomes speculative. Let us go to the legitimate ones as presented. We want to assume that the bill is brought in good faith, and we address ourselves to the good faith which has been brought. One, you talk about the bill being unconstitutional. Reason is that it is founded on the definition of foreigner, which in your view and many other people's view is that it exceeds beyond what is provided for. Can we now, as a matter of clarification, number one, if this committee looked at the definition of foreigner and we come up with a different definition other than the one in the bill, would that calm your fears? Especially that you say that literally, I think you mentioned around 6 clauses or 7 clauses are based around the definition of. It's about this unconstitutionality. You look, if you are talk about the entire bill, the unconstitutionality of the entire bill would be looked at in reference to the object of the bill. However, if the object of the bill is actually constitutional, then you go specifically to details of clauses, because you can have the object constitutional,
but many other clauses unconstitutional. Because we need to make that distinction of the bill being constitutional and many clauses being unconstitutional. If, in my view, we address the constitutionality of the clauses as you've outlined them in your submission, would that calm down your fears? If we go clause by clause and you see which particular clause offends which particular provision of the Constitution, would that calm down your fears? Because for us to come as a committee that the bill is unconstitutional, we must have a basis. The entire bill cannot be unconstitutional because one or two clauses are unconstitutional. Unless the entire, when you look at the object of the bill, it is clearly unconstitutional. Question from you? No. Allow the Honorable Katun to submit. Well, on that point, I'll end there. Were you seeking clarification from Honorable Katuntu or the Secretary General? No, he has closed. Let's go to the Secretary General to make his responses and then we'll close this.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members, and thank you very much for the kind words. Number one, in response to Honorable Siwambi, yes, Article 81 provides for national interest, but I also want to refer you to Article 43 of the Constitution, which talks about public interest and clearly says that public interest shall not permit political persecution. This bill intends, for all intents and purposes, to persecute the people of Uganda. It is intended at political persecution. And so national interest, and I'm trying to infer public interest into national interest, it cannot in any way stand insofar as it promotes political persecution. And so, but also secondly, when you say what would be the role of Parliament, this protection of sovereignty bill as it is not the law envisaged under Article 8A. The law envisaged thereunder is a law that would clarify what national interest amounts to. That's not what this bill is doing. So this bill just refers to national interest, but does not even define what national interest is. So if you ask me what Article 8A, the import of that would be, because it says that Parliament, Uganda shall be governed based on principles of national interest and common good. And we all know that that's not what is happening today, both in practice and in legislation. So I think that, in fact, the enactment of this bill into law would be contrary to Article 8A that you're making reference to. Now, I did mention something about opposing government policy, and I think some honorable members...
Sir, you see, the problem comes when lawyers are trying to argue. I think what we should, as a clarification, if this bill was to operationalize any provision of the Constitution, the object would state so.
Absolutely. And that's what he was asking. That's what the Honorable was asking, what would be the role of Parliament? And I said, this law is not really addressing Article 8A of the Constitution. It doesn't. About government programs, I think we have a right to criticize government programs. And when I say we are in opposition, it does not mean that we are going to be opposing every single thing. But what I'm saying is that we have a right, and the people of Uganda, whether in Uganda or in the diaspora, should have a right to oppose those government policies or programs. And people, you know, Ugandans in the diaspora should even have a right to encourage the people of Uganda. If a person is in the diaspora and wants to communicate to the people of Uganda or mobilize them to oppose a certain policy which they think is oppressive or repressive towards them, they must have a right to do that. And that's why we talk about alternatives, because if, for example, you talked about UPE and PDM, as an UP we have a better understanding of how those programs would be for the benefit of the people. So it's not, we have a right to offer alternatives and definitely to oppose those things which we do not agree with. Now, someone, I think the honorable member also asked about paragraph 3, which begins, notwithstanding the unconstitutional nature of some of their provisions. I think you misread that paragraph, because that paragraph refers to other laws. It refers to the Anti-Money Laundering Act, the Computer Misuse, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, the Presidential Elections Act, etc. That's not a reference to this bill. That's why we say, notwithstanding the constitutional and unconstitutional nature of some of their provisions, other laws that already address the defects purportedly identified, the bill include, and we give a list thereunder. So it's not that we are conceding that there are some provisions which are constitutional. No, not at all. The honorable member said that the law won't affect only NUP, which is why you should also oppose it. Definitely. I was here to speak on behalf of NUP diaspora, but now that you agree that it will also affect your diaspora, then you should, as NRM, oppose it with all your lives. Now, Honorable Katuntu, the senior, talked about, his question is, what if the definition of foreigner is rectified? And my submission would be that it would require the withdrawal of this bill, because the entire objectives of this bill are based on the definition as it is stated. So it would probably require you to withdraw it and redraft. If you look at, that's why in our submission begins with the objectives of this bill. We begin by opposing, because if the objective of the bill and every other provision relates to this animal called the foreigner as has been defined, then I think even if you changed, you cannot only change the definition of foreigner and retain the other provisions thereunder in their current form, because then that would defeat the definition of foreigner as it is. I hasten to add that the cardinal stated objective of this bill is to promote the sovereignty of the people of Uganda, but in fact it takes that away. This bill takes out the sovereignty of the people of Uganda in the objectives. So that's why I'm saying that the entire bill is based on this idea of the foreigner as has been currently defined. And I think if you wanted to change that definition of foreigner, it would require this bill to be withdrawn. They go back and do a good job. If they wanted to bring a law that promotes sovereignty and not tag it to what they have tagged it onto. So that's, and then you talk about constitutionality. Again, from the objectives, we are saying that right from the objectives throughout all the provisions, everything is really, really unconstitutional if you look at it. The broad, for example, Honorable, you know very well that in the Karamaji Andrew case, the Constitutional Court was very clear about provisions that are vague, that are so broad, and I think that has come through many other provisions, including the Kabaziguluka case. Now, we are saying that if you look at the several provisions of this bill, they are so broad, they are not specific. You cannot see what they are intending to address. They are trying to catch everybody and nobody. So that's why you cannot say that by changing the definition of foreigner, you would achieve constitutionality, in our humble opinion.
Thank you, Right Honorable Secretary General of the National Interplatform. Now that he has even received a round of applause from the stakeholders, I hope that points that have come out so clearly and well canvassed, you will just make reference to those points. You don't have again to labor yourself, because he has been very articulate on quite a number of things, so you will save time by just making, maybe concurring with the Secretary General on some matters. So we thank you so much. Matters well captured. We have the memorandum, and we can give you assurance that all the matters discussed will be given due attention. And we ask you to take your leave. Thank you so much. And the Honorable Secretary will give us the opportunity to escort you, as he's very excited about the boss being in the house. Good. So we have next is Muslim charity organizations. And the lead of the delegation will use this microphone. Yeah, this one, yeah. Thank you. So the lead of delegation will... Colleagues who have come in later, there colleagues who have not introduced yourselves, I give you this opportunity now before we proceed. Everyone introduced?
My name is Abdul Katuntu, Member of Parliament for Bugweri, and I'm a member of the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. Standing member.
Here, senior member of the committee.
But I also have to declare my interest, conflict, and I will not participate in the conversation that arises out of that group.
Okay, for obvious reasons. Quite understandable.
Honourable Chair, my name is Francis Mwiruche. I'm a member of Parliament for Bugweri County.
Honourable Chair, I am Welife Peter Christopher, Member of Parliament of Woolo West, Nafa District, and a member of Committee for Legal and Parliamentary Affairs.
Honourable Chair, I'm Sebi Karijol, MP Ntwetwe, Chankwanzi District, a member of Defence and Internal Affairs Committee.
Just a minute. Thank you. We have a cup of tea. Stakeholders are invited. Just go quietly and pick a cup of tea and a snack. Stakeholders just come. Can you kindly deal with our clerk right here? Thank you. I now invite the Muslim charity organizations. You will introduce yourselves and proceed to present your memorandum.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Imam Ibn Idi Kasozi, the Imam, Mawanga Masjid, Muslim community. We are representing 24 Muslim civil organizations, both NGOs as well as associations. They are Uganda Muslim Youth Assembly, Mia Foundation, Humanitarian Efforts and Relief Uganda, Muslim Welfare, Solidarity Fund, ex-Makerere University Muslim Student Association, Salam Charity, Al-Hidayah Foundation, SMK Foundation, Islamic Center for Education and Research, Sahara Charity Organization, Green Top Charity Organization, First Candle Charity Outreach Organization, Mawanga Masjid Muslim Community, Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association, Organization for Muslim Social Development and Innovation, Just Humane Organization, Al-Huda Drops of Hope, Uganda Muslim Women Vision, Salam TV, Uganda Muslim Teachers Association, Uganda Muslim Education Association, Buganda Royal Muslim Student Association, and Uganda Qur'an Schools Association. Our delegation has 11 members, whom I would like to introduce quickly. Number 1, Abdul Karim Kalisa, representing Union of Muslim Councils of East and Central Africa plus Salam Charity. Dr. Toha Kasule, Al-Hidayah and Director, Kampala Campus, Islamic University in Uganda. Sentam Ahmed of here, Uganda. Osama Rwasampija of Green Top. Twaha Matovu, Sahara Charity. Kanal Harun Umia, Siraj Fampa Solidarity Fund, Abdul Salam Chunube, Country Director Salam Charity, Huzaifa Chibira, First Kando, and Rugorobe Ahmed, Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association. Mr. Chairman, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for inviting us to come and present our memorandum, which we had earlier sent to you. In this memorandum, as you see, ours is preserve freedom of worship. I do know many people have presented to ours, but we have some specific things we think, if not properly addressed to, may interfere with our worship. And as a community which has been disadvantaged to some sort.
Do you have a copy of this? I have one. You don't have?
I have given you several of them.
You gave us several?
Several, yes.
Chair, also the memorandum
whoever is interested, I can give more.
You have some?
But folks should listen attentively. He supports Jews.
And I
listen to the Muslim.
I support human rights. And
I support human wrongs.
Also the memorandum from the diaspora.
Okay, let's just be attentive.
Actually, I had imagined that since this memorandum was forwarded earlier,
more copies are coming in.
It had been photocopied. But at least I know I have provided about 10 of them.
We will have more
house.
copies shortly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Begin with the folks.
Memorandum of?
From the people of the diaspora.
The one of NUP?
Yes, has not been shared.
Do we have a copy?
Yes, they shared. They said that they had shared already in advance.
Okay, run more copies and have the members get copies.
They had two presentations, the one for the...
Okay, let's proceed.
Now, I was saying before the interjection that we as a community, we have certain things specific to us which we think the law being proposed is very, very unfair in many sections. And therefore, as leaders in the community, we thought that we should be here by the order of the hadith of the Prophet, which says, Man ra'a minkum al-munkara fayughayyiru biyadihi fa in lam yastati'u fa bil-lisan fa in lam yastati'u fa bil-qalbi. According to that tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is agreed upon by all the 6 books of hadith,
procedure, Chair.
He says, whoever...
What's the procedure matter?
I'm not intervening in his submission. I want to understand what he has said so that I...
Why don't you be patient, Honorable?
If you are
No, you said, gentlemen, you said that according to that which is agreed upon. My only concern is I don't want you to proceed before I understand, right? There is no ill will whatsoever. I just want, because you have spoken a language I am not conversant with, I want to capture you properly,
okay,
so that I may respond appropriately.
Imam, you'll interpret whatever.
Thank you.
I was going to that one exactly. I was going to interpret that, and I would also beg Mr. Chair that in certain sections where I have to invoke some verses of the Quran, I want to say them as they are, and then I will interpret. Let everybody feel comfortable. I am the Imam. So, the Prophet, whoever amongst you sees anything wrong, he should change it by force if he can. If he cannot, he should speak against it as you have come here. If he cannot, he should hate it in his heart, but that is a weakness of faith. That is what it means, Honorable Sir.
Thank you very much.
Introduction. We acknowledge the government's duty to to safeguard Uganda's sovereignty and promote national integrity. We are equally aware of the risks associated with foreign interference and the potential for external interests to be prioritized over the common good. However, the authority to legislate carries a fundamental obligation to ensure that all proposals conform to the Constitution of Uganda and international human rights standards. Laws must be precise and transparent to prevent arbitrary enforcement. Upon reviewing the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026, we find that its current restrictive and punitive framework poses a direct threat to the exercise of the Islamic faith. If enacted, the bill's vague provisions will obstruct the fulfillment of the 5 pillars of Islam, specifically Salah, Zakah, Sawm, and Hajj. Salah means prayer, Zakah means almsgiving, Sawm means fasting the month of Ramadan, and Hajj means the pilgrimage to the holy place, alongside the Sunnah practice of Sadaqah. And also it may jeopardize those people who give Sadaqah, which is charity. By imposing these restrictions, the bill violates Article 29 of the Ugandan Constitution, which guarantees the freedom of religion and worship. We call upon the legislature to revise these measures to ensure they do not infringe upon the fundamental rights of the Muslim community in Uganda and outside. Summary of the concerns, of the key concerns. Number 1, constitutional violation, Article 29, 1C. The bill directly infringes upon the constitutionally guaranteed right to freedom of worship. 2, obstruction of the Islamic pillars. The proposed legislation creates security-led red tape that hinders the practice of Salah, Zakah, Hajj, and Ramadan. 3, unfair labeling of foreigner agents. The bill unfairly categorizes religious leaders, charitable institutions, recipients, beneficiaries as foreigner agents, subjecting them to an unnecessary, tedious process of registration. Number 4, unrealistic financial constraints. The limit of 20,000 currency points, Uganda shillings approximately 400 million, funding per year without approval from the minister is unrealistic, and a penalty of 4 billion attached to it. This will affect progress of Muslim projects in the country, including the maintenance of the National Mosque itself. As you are aware, this parliament, some few months back, you passed some assistance to this place. 5, criminalization of religious guidance by labeling the declaration of goods or services economic sabotage. The bill risks criminalizing religious leaders for providing essential moral and dietary guidance to the faithful. Those 5 areas. Number 1. So we got 3. The impact of the bill on Muslim faith. Salah or prayer and the maintenance of mosques. Salah is the second pillar of Islam, practiced 5 times a day in congregation. Islamic tradition teaches that a person is rewarded for every step taken walking to a mosque for prayers, and that Allah builds a house in the paradise for a person who builds a mosque. Mosques are Allah's houses where faith is strengthened, morals inculcated in our lives, souls are refined, and citizens encouraged to desist from social evil such as corruption, theft of public resources, and providing unjust leadership. The role of foreigner support. It is a matter of public record that the Muslim community in Uganda relies heavily on foreigner donors to to construct mosques and provide water sources for ablution, which all benefit the wider community. Our national mosque at Wadi Kampala stands as a premier testament to this global solidarity. Its construction and ongoing maintenance have been sustained by foreign funding rather than local contributions. In contrast, the only notable local support recorded is the 2.5 billion provided to the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council in 2023 for constitutional reviews and elections, and the allocation of 14 billion to settle one Chabwazi debt as a result of court battles that had led to the attachment and auctioning of the National Mosque. Legislative constraints and concerns. The proposed bill threatens this religious foundation through several restrictive and measures. Number one, financial. Clause 22. The bill imposes a strict annual cap of 400 million on a foreign funding without written ministerial approval. This limit is insufficient for the construction of a modern mosque and the maintenance of a large-scale institution like a national mosque. Apart from that, when we look at this amount of money they are talking about, one of these organizations listed here, I don't know whether we have an MP from Kayunga here. We are constructing a fully-fledged ward for sickle cells people because they are being treated on a street in that hospital. And its cost is over 400 million, including furnishing it, putting everything there in. So when you restrict us to only 400 million in a year, it means we shall do one project or we shall fail to do that project even when it's of a national interest. Kayunga Hospital, I don't think, is for the Muslim community. Number two of that example, we do, some of you in your own constituencies, we have provided water, power motorized water, solar water. I don't know whether we have an MP from Kazara here. In my former school called Chitunga High School, where I went, ever since I was there in the 70s, up to recently, their problem was water. One of the organizations represented here, through foreign funding, we constructed a water well which provides 6,000 liters of water per hour, over 50 million. So that is why we think, for us as Muslims, and that is charity anyway. So the moment you restrict us from doing charity, you are impinging on our faith. So that is number two. Stigmatization and red tape clause 15 and 16.
Imam,
yes.
Information to you. In the constituency of the chairman here, of
we
this
have
committee,
a school.
the chairman here, in his constituency, you constructed a school.
Yes, even in Kamuli, the one
In
from
Namukonge, you constructed a school through that charitable chairman here.
So,
and Namukonge is where the grandmother of Honorable Katundu comes from. These all are beneficiaries here.
That's why Katundu restricted himself, because he knows. Now, we move on. I can give many examples, but because of time, let me stop on those ones. Because I'm very certain that we have been to the whole of this country, and recently I have been in Karamoja, and we are going to provide a school, a same school actually in Karamoja, because I was astonished. A group of about 30 school-going children, when I met them in their village, in Kangole, and I greeted them simply, how are you? None of them replied. When I asked why, they said, we don't know school. And the school is 10 kilometers from here, we can't go to school. So we offered to put the structure for the school, and soon I will be to Karamoja, maybe next week, to converse on this work. Okay. Let me speak in the microphone. Stigmatization and red tape, clause 15 and 16, by requiring any entity or person receiving foreign support to register as a foreign agent under the Department of Peace and Security. The bill risks unfairly labeling mosques leaders and religious institutions as agents of foreign powers. And sometimes, when you leave it plainly, I have been following ever since we started this committee work. I listened to the Attorney General, and he said, you know, the Attorney General, who is a lawyer, I am not a lawyer, but I got opportunity also to teach at the School of Law, despite that I'm not a lawyer, for 3 consecutive years, and the biggest school of law in this country. So he said, as if he's presuming that somebody is going to commit a what? And he says, if you see you can remove it. Then I realized how many laws, for example, you know, Public Order Management Act asks us that if we want to organize anything, we inform the police. But the police, out of fear, thinking that they are respecting their leaders, they say that we must ask permission. So that's why we are worried that interpretation of this by auxilious implementers who are full of fear, confusing it to be respect, may cause problems to the people of Uganda under this bill. 3, security.
Imam, I request you, Imam, to stick to your text.
Security-led interference. These clauses will stifle the maintenance of our holy sites, entangling religious institutions in security-led red tape simply for receiving donations intended for worshiping and community service. Number 2, in Zakah, alms giving. Zakah is the 3rd pillar of Islam and the mandatory obligation of obligation for wealth in the world to give a specified portion of their assets, cash, livestock, produce, or materials to those in need. The Holy Quran, chapter 9, verse 60, which says, إِنَّمَا صَدَقَاتِ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ. For easy attention to easy attention, poor is for the needy, those who work in it, the wayfarers, those in debt, those who are sick, blah, 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 8 categories. So when you restrict, if supposing a rich man in the Muslim world wants to give all his zakat to Uganda, and it is above 400 million shillings, what happens? Because it's the portion of his wealth. Therefore, that's why we think that this thing has issues. What are the legislative constraints in this one and concerns? The Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026 threatens to criminalize and obstruct this mandatory act of faith through the following. Number 1, registration and ministerial control, which is part 3 of that clause. The bill makes it mandatory for all recipients of zakah to register as agents of foreigner. It grants the minister sweeping powers to deny or suspend this legislation, effectively giving the government the authority to prevent Muslims from receiving zakah. 2, burdensome reporting. Recipients would be forced to file returns to the minister, introducing tedious conditions for a simple act of worship. 3, forfeit of funds, clause number 22. Any zakah sent from abroad exceeding Uganda shillings 400 million without prior ministerial permission is subject to forfeit. These restrictive measures will discourage international donors from sending zakah to Ugandans, directly interfering with the fundamental religious pillar. 4, prohibition on social welfare, clause 7. This clause prohibits an agent of a foreigner from engaging in social welfare or infrastructure activities without cabinet approval, encroaching on the direct distribution of alms. I have already given examples, I don't need to repeat. 3, Ramadan. Ramadan and the community feeding. Ramadan is the 4th pillar of Islam, observed annually. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims are encouraged to feed the needy with immense spiritual rewards promise to those who provide items for others to break their futile. Uganda is a significant beneficiary of global contribution that enable the poor to observe the month of Ramadan. Uganda Muslim Assembly, this year alone, throughout this country, distributed food to over 12,000 families, equivalent to 1.5 billion Uganda shillings. Now they want to restrict us. I don't know how many times you have been in the camps with a lot of food and others. So there are legislative constraints and concerns over this part. The bill's unreasonable procedures and funding limitations will undermine the ability of underprivileged Muslims to practice their fast. Number one, influence on social dynamics, clause 22. The bill provides for the forfeit of assets. This one, even if I don't repeat, I have already said it. But above all, the fine it puts there. They are restricting you from receiving 400 million, but the fine is 10 times. This is extremely unfair. I don't know. I don't know. As a student of Islamic thought, I am inclined to think that somebody who did this is heartless. Number two, risked property. Under these vague definitions, mosque property could be confiscated simply for hosting foreigner-sponsored feeding programs. 3. Restriction on policy and provision. Provisions prohibiting individuals from carrying out activities that overlap with government policies, unless authorized, may prevent the distribution of food and essential items, hindering followers across the country from breaking their fast according to Islamic tradition. Number 4, pilgrimage. Hajj. Hajj is the 5th pillar of Islam, an obligation to be fulfilled at least once in a lifetime. For years, Islamic countries, foreign organizations, and charitable individuals have sponsored Ugandans who cannot afford the journey. Notably, even one office of the president has recently been a beneficiary of such a generation of sponsorship, which have helped many fulfill their Hajj. You are all aware that the government of Sudan during the time of Bashir gave Uganda, the president of Uganda, money to take 100 pilgrims. So this justifies that we need this support, since even the government itself receives it to give it to the people. Legislative constraints and concerns. While the bill exempts the government from restrictive measures, it imposes unkind hurdles on ordinary citizens. Number 1, expansion of the term foreigner. Clause 1. The bill defines foreigners to include Ugandans living in the diaspora. Consequently, a Ugandan in the UAE or United Kingdom sponsoring a relative for Hajj could trigger foreigner agent registration requirements under Clause 15. 2. Targeting students and pilgrims. Muslims traveling abroad for Hajj or religious studies risk being categorized as foreigners simply for being outside the country for the unspecified period. And you know, the bill does not specify the time to be called a foreigner. Even one day, you may qualify. This will inevitably constrain ordinary citizens from accessing the international support necessary for their spiritual journey. Sadaqah, charitable giving, and Islamic education. Sadaqah is a fundamental Islamic practice emphasized in the Holy Quran and the Sunnah. As a matter of fact, the Quran says that when a person is approaching death, one only thing he will regret is not paying sadaqah. And he will ask the Almighty, can you delay me for at least a moment so that I can pay sadaqah and be among the faithful. All these other things, no. We are all going to regret as we are going to die. Sadaqah. But now we are being restricted on the amount we want to give. Therefore, I am saying Sadaqah is a fundamental Islamic practice, emphasized in the Word Quran and Sunnah. It encompasses everything from a simple smile to the donation of land and millions of cash funds. Given a history of marginalization, the Muslim community in Uganda has relied on global sadaqah to educate vulnerable children, build schools, provide water sources, and support hospitals. This charity transcends religion. For example, Islamic organizations have constructed a boreholes in Katakwe, home of the Vice President, and Bukedeya, home of the Speaker of Parliament. The Islamic University in Uganda secured a $13.5 million from Islamic Development Bank to establish a faculty of engineering in addition to other donations Sadaqah to train Ugandans. Therefore, we are concerned because we are aware that many of us, including myself, I am a beneficiary of the Rockefeller Foundation. When I was doing my master's degree, Rockefeller funded me. So when you say we limit foreigners from funding people, including many of you, you are beneficiaries. And on that side, I see many of you who have benefited from the Australian sponsorship scheme. You see, I know several of you, because I recommended you and you passed through. I know. Therefore, it is with that background, Mr. Chairman, that we are concerned. Therefore, what are the legislative constraints here and concerns? The bill threatens to paralyze these humanitarian and educational efforts. Number one, restriction on advocacy. Clause 8 and 10. These clauses prohibit foreigner-funded entities from engaging in advocacy or promoting policies not yet adopted by the cabinet. This could prevent Islamic institutions from advocating for essential needs such as the inclusion of the Islamic banking or religious education in national curriculum. 2. Economic support. The clause could be used to prosecute those who speak out about the marginalization of the Muslim community. Such as statements could be arbitrarily deemed as weakening the national interest or economic sabotage, stifling the voices of those who seek to improve the community's welfare. Some of the programs already mentioned in the previous presentation by a fellow from that side, he talked about PDM and others. For example, I am an imam. PDM comes to fund programs that in some way contradict the Islamic teachings. If I spoke about, if I stood in the mosque and told the Muslims that, please, if the money is to go for you to rear pigs, or to establish a piggery, or to establish, to sell alcohol, please don't. In instance, I'm sabotaging a government program because it's PDM, yes. But in reality, I am also defending the faith where the Constitution gives me opportunity to believe in that faith. So that's why we think that Imam. It has an issue. Number 3, threats to education. By restricting the funds that sustain teachers and preachers, the bill undermines the community's ability to raise God-fearing citizens and provide technical training to future Ugandan engineers and others. Political participation. I am about to finish, don't worry. And leadership, clause 11. The Holy Quran mandates that Muslims must be honest and and faithful in practicing, in participating in the determination of their leadership. However, clause 11 of the bill stipulates that once a person is declared an agent of a foreigner, they are prohibited from participating in or influencing how Ugandans are led. This not only undermines the Quranic requirements to engage in leadership, but also risks the infrastructurizing all beneficiaries of foreign support. Furthermore, this is a clear violation of Article 1 of the Constitution, which vests sovereignty power in the people, and the Article 59, which guarantees the right to vote. Religious authority and economic sabotage, Clause 13. Islamic leaders are mandated by the Holy Quran to guide the faithful in following what is halal, permissible, and avoiding what is haram, forbidden. This includes the authority to declare certain foods, businesses, or services haram. Under Clause 13 of the bill, such a guidance could be interpreted as economic sabotage. This creates a dangerous situation where an Islamic leader could be prosecuted simply for fulfilling their religious duty to protect the faith of their followers, thereby severely undermining the practice of Islam. The socio-economic reality. While the bill pretends to protect sovereignty by suggesting Ugandans should self-fund their affairs, the economic reality is far different. Reports from the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, UBOS, clearly indicate that many Ugandans are economically unable to do so and still require significant external support. The Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026 is aimed at stifling the gains made by the Muslim community and the country at large. Its spirit and intentions are flawed. It infringes on ibadah, worship, and restricts the spirit of global humanism through unnecessary limitations scattered throughout the text. Our final appeal and call to action. We urgently appeal to the honorable members of parliament, to you, honorable members, to critically examine the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026. In its current form, this legislation will undermine the practice of the Islamic faith by blocking the resources necessary to sustain our places of worship and essential community projects such as water for the public and even paying school fees. One of the organizations represented here, we support 7,500 orphans throughout this country. So when you restrict the amount of money, I don't know whether we shall be able to pay school fees for these children. And many of you, because I have this on finger, many of you from your own constituencies, we have these children and other projects that I have mentioned. Therefore, Uganda's development benefits from partnership with the development partners, and the restrictive interpretation of sovereignty will undermine access to development financing, disrupt ongoing programs, limit knowledge exchange, and technical support. Sovereignty should reinforce national ownership of development, not isolate Ugandans from global cooperation. Effective sovereignty is best realized when it empowers citizens, protects freedoms, and fosters collaboration for shared prosperity. The bill must be withdrawn and reconsidered to reflect the unique religious reality of the Muslim community and the general socio-economic conditions of Uganda. We must ensure that the freedom of worship solemnly guaranteed under Article 29 of the Constitution is not sacrificed under the guise of national security. We call upon Parliament to strike out the restrictive clauses that penalize faith-based support. Should this appeal fail, we shall be left with no option but to call upon Allah, the Almighty, to save us and our faith from the consequences of this bill. Signed on behalf of the petitioners, Imam Iban Idi Kasozi, the Imam Mawanga Masjid.
Order. Order. Order, Honorable Asumani. Order. 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 Now, if you, as you realize, the Imam the submission of the Imam is not only restricted to the Islamic faith, but it speaks to even the wider society. So I hope that the issues now are getting narrower. It is my view that the issues are now getting narrower, and I will invite colleagues to, if there are any grey areas that you wish to have some clarification on. Two colleagues, Honorable Fox and myself, I have a question, and I will start.
Okay.
Imam, if the bill clearly excluded all the funding that you have quoted that come in the country in respect of the activities that you have quoted, namely Salat, Zakat, Ramadan, and Hajj, if we excluded all those funds, which I think we must do, because you have demonstrated very clearly that those funds should be out of the purview, would you support the bill?
Would I support
another
the issue? Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Thank you very much, Imam Kasozi, for a wonderful memorandum. Only one question. Can you categorize the entire bill as haram, or there are clauses that you are amenable to considering as being halal?
My procedure issue was with the previous.
Address substantive
Yeah,
matters.
I'm addressing, so Chair. You cannot.
Honorable Suman, you raise a substantive matter to the Imam and you will get a response.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I want in a special way to thank renowned Muslim scholar and cleric, Imam Kasozi, for the adumbration. I think, Chair, the concerns that have been raised speak to some of the dangers that probably could not have been anticipated in drafting this bill. But at the risk of being a devil's advocate, Imam, don't you really think that the country's sovereignty needs to be protected? Isn't there something called protection of a country's sovereignty? And if so, what ways would that sovereignty actually be protected, if not through a piece of legislation like this one?
Over to you, Imam.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. Imam, there are some clauses where you did not maybe spare time.
Soliciting Imam's view on
Like you, Chair, you did. The way, Chair, you did asking his side of the story. If at all, apart from the other issues to do with Zakat and the Hajj, would he accept the rest of the terms, the provisions in the bill? Through you, Chair, Section 28 about the inspection, which states requiring a person appointed as a minister may at any reasonable time inspect the premises of an agent of a foreigner, may request for any information that appears to him or her necessary for purposes of giving effect to this act. Specifically, what is your take on Section 28? Yes, Clause 28 of this bill.
Thank you very much.
Let's have the responses, colleagues. You'll interact with other stakeholders.
I want to take a general qaida. Mr. Chairman, allow me to take a general qaida which you call a general rule, because when I say Qaeda, people may think I'm talking about Al-Qaeda, but a general rule regarding the question of haram or halal. According to the teachings of Islam, haram is haram, kalilahu aw kathira. That anything, when it is haram, whether it is small or big, small quantities or huge, it is haram. That is the general rule. Therefore, if I see anything that is haram in an issue of national importance like this, disguised as the protection of my sovereignty, I have to alert others. Why?
Oh, incidentally, we don't applause like that in Parliament. We foot stamp.
Okay. Why?
Foot stamp.
Why? And on a general issue, whether it is religious or social, as I have said, we do reject it in its entirety. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, it's verse, I think, 111, I think 11. Kuntum khayru ummat. Quran tells us that we are the best community. Chapter 3 verse 110 says, Kuntum khayru ummati ukhrijat linnas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. You are the best community brought up for mankind. Why? You instruct people to do good and restrict them from doing wrong, and you believe in the Almighty. We are here to advise and say that any form of oppression to even your enemy, Islam hates it. In one tradition of the Prophet, he says, and this one is the Hadith al-Qudus, words are for Allah, but the one who has said, the message is from Allah, the Prophet is not saying it. The Prophet Allah says that I, your creator, I am oppression on myself and made it haram to all. وَلَا تَظَلَّمُوا, do not to others. This bill, according to me, is intended to oppress people in many ways, and therefore I am clear on that. Then, therefore, I am saying, Mr. Chairman, when you say if it is excluded, even when you exclude this and you leave the other, I was being asked, and Imam, you don't want, you don't want to be, if you look at in my introduction, paragraph 2, after acknowledging, I first acknowledged that it is okay. But I said, however, the authority to legislate carries a fundamental obligation to ensure that all proposals conform to the Constitution of Uganda and international human rights standards. Laws, the protections in the bill, we find that it is in its current restrictive and punitive framework poses a direct threat. If they are going to remove these direct threats to human beings, we have no problem with it. Thank you so much.
For your indulgence, I wanted to take advantage of the presence of the Imam, whom I thank so much for this presentation. Since we started receiving stakeholders, we have had very good legal arguments, political arguments, economic arguments, cultural arguments. And now I would like to ask and benefit from the philosophical or doctrinal arguments around the concept of sovereignty. Because in my understanding, or my thinking, it appears that whoever is behind this bill may not be having a clear understanding of the concept of sovereignty. And therefore, sovereignty has been invoked to probably solve something else. And I want you, if it is possible, to address us on that. What are those philosophical and doctrinal, even you could say theoretical underpinnings around the concept of sovereignty. If we understand, me and the members of the committee, then I think it will be very helpful on how we proceed.
One verse of the Quran is enough to answer him, and it comes in a form of a question. أَلَيْثَ الْأَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةٌ فَتُهَاجِرُ فِيهَا. So that verse restricts what you call sovereignty by telling us that Allah will ask us, when you are suffering and you did, why didn't you move? Wasn't the earth of the creation of Allah on earth so wide so that you go where you will feel comfortable? Therefore, to us, these artificial borders people talk about, hence calling people foreigners, do work against the principle with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his messengers from Adam to Jesus to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that one to me is enough, because we do not have restrictions of boundaries. And in one of the traditions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that humanity is like one body. If one toy below here feels is hurt, the whole body gets what? Fever. And it is with that background, sir, Honorable Du, that I say that that verse is enough to explain. Inshallah, in your free time you can engage me. I will add many more other things that, because of the interest of time and we have many people, allow me to. The last question that somebody asked me to ask, and I thought about it. This parliament, as we speak today, is left with 15 days. Really, Mr. Chairman, how did you accept, with the limited number of days remaining, as Odur alluded to, did you take the opportunity to tackle this very critical law when you have only 15 days to go? And even, you see, presented once, the two other presentations done in the same day, the 45 days you talk about in your rules forgotten, we get worried that who is it that we are making this? Is it for the sovereignty of Ugandans or to protect individuals who have three categories? They have three characteristics. Leaders in Africa have three characteristics. Number one, they fear people they lead. This law shows fear. Number two, they deceive or they lie people they lead. The intention of this law has a lot of lies. Lastly, they cheat people they lead. That's why they say they can confiscate money that has come to serve orphans just because it's more than 400 million at a go. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Order. Order. Thank you so much, Imam Kasozi and your team. Just a small clarification. We are under no obligation to conclude this bill in 15 days. We are only doing our work. If we can conclude the stakeholder consultations in the few days left, and also do committee consideration of the views that you have given us, and then be able to report to the House, if it is possible, we will do that. If it is not possible, there is no hurry in Africa. This matter will be dealt with later. So we are only doing our work. The bill was read for the first time and referred to the committee, the two committees for consideration. So that's what we are doing. And we are not in a hurry. The 45 days is the maximum a bill should stay with the committee. Beyond 45 days, you seek the leave of the House to deal with the bill beyond 45 days. But a bill can be dealt with in just one day under our rules, or in a week. So, committee has 45 days. If you have not dealt with that bill, you go back to the House and seek leave to either go for another, maybe they can give you 30 days or 40 again, or 45. So, we are within the rules. We will do what we can. We are not going to hurry anyone. And if time catches us, the bill will be withdrawn and reintroduced during the 12th Parliament. Thank you so much. Imam Kasos and your team, you can now take your leave. We have an attendance book that is... we have an attendance book running around. Kindly register your attendance to ensure that we capture now. I beg your indulgence, colleagues and stakeholders. You have all been involved in situations where there is an emergency, where you even have to probably even cancel your journey to attend to an emergency, for example, on the road. So we have men and women in the gowns here, the medical personnel who have left probably patients in the hospitals, because there are many. And so I want to ask the Honorable Nsibambi to come for 30 minutes, and then that will be followed by the Uganda Medical Association, who came in much later than most of us, but in the interest of them going back to attend to the life-saving situations, we will give them an opportunity after Honorable Nsibambi. So Honorable Nsibambi, you are welcome. PFF, just make yourselves comfortable. So we now have Honorable Nsibambi, who is a lonely presenter, one-man army. Is that what they call a Gumite?
Chair, I can see Honorable Nsibambi with the FDC people. Are they presenting together?
He will tell us. He will tell us.
So PFA, no, FDC, PFF, yeah.
Thank you. Order. We will proceed.
Thank you, Chair.
30 minutes to Honorable Nsibambi, 15 minutes to present, 15 minutes to interact with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Yusuf Nsibambi, Member of Parliament, Mawokota County South. I'm presenting as a Member of Parliament, representing Mawokota County South, and a teacher of law for about 25 years. Yesterday, Honorable Chair, from morning to evening at 7, I was in the House before this committee. So I thank you for your kind permission for me to give my views. I've submitted the memorandum. It's just 4 pages. Actually, yesterday. Yes. Oh, yes. The committee works throughout the... Okay, before the clerk.
It was Friday.
I hope he has made copies, but if not, my presentation is going to be very brief. Honorable Chair and honorable members, first of all, apart from areas where I've highlighted as not adopted, I do associate myself with the bill in its entirety without modification. I also do associate myself with the memorandum presented before you by the Attorney General, which I looked at, except where I differ in this my memorandum. Mr. Chair, to understand the gist of this bill or any law, one has to look at the long title of the bill and also read the bill in its entirety, not just picking a clause and you highlight that as a problem. Under clause 1, Mr. Chairman, the bill outlines the long title with the following salient features: to provide for the sovereignty of the people of Uganda, to designate a department responsible for peace and security, and then 3, registration. There are issues of funding, which I've highlighted and I'll talk about under the long title. Mr. Chairman and honorable members, In a sentence, the bill creates a comprehensive legal regime for sovereignty, you can say integrity, of the people of Uganda. They are, in the bill, you talk about defects, and many legal scholars and civil society are talking about existing laws, that this bill, in a way, it creates a crisis, this duplicity, that you have other laws, starting with the Constitution, Anti-Money Laundering Act, Terrorism Act, Political Organizations Act, and other laws. So that you don't need this bill, because there are laws prevailing which can handle the situations highlighted in the bill, in the long title, which I don't want to believe, and I will briefly explain why. When you look at clause 2 about application of the bill, it is clear that this bill is not really, is not oppressive, but you really want to operationalize the Constitution. Article 1 talks about sovereignty, but you need a law to operationalize that. And we're saying comprehensively now we have a bill to put in force or the implementation of this particular article. And I'll go now straight to the interpretation clause. Mr. Chairman and honorable members, when you look at the interpretation clause, specifically clause 1 of the bill provides, in this act, comma, unless the context otherwise requires. And this is here a uniform or standard opening clause for most acts of parliament. But I want to dissect it in 3 areas. First, when you look at this clause, it says in this act, you just highlight that one first. In this act, then comma, you also highlight the comma, unless the context otherwise requires. And this one covers the bill. It becomes now constitutional in this act, meaning the provisions highlighted in this act are meant to handle a situation. Then comma, the comma clauses isolates the act. It becomes now comprehensive. It's not just an ordinary comma, otherwise there would be no comma. So in this act, we are talking about the Protection of Sovereignty Act. You have who is a sovereign, who is a foreigner, who is supposed to report, who has powers to regulate the minister in this act. So when you throw me to the Constitution giving you rights, it's wrong, because the act is specifically meant to handle the protection of the sovereign of Ugandans. That's why it's in this act, and then you have a comma closing. It's statutory interpretation. It's not an ordinary talk. If you have land and buy land, and you are not a surveyor, you are not in position to determine the extent of your ownership. You have to get a surveyor. If you are not a dentist, whether your kid suffered the whole night crying and you have a problem, you go to a dentist. So now the law says in this act. Now you look at the act first, which is meant to operationalize the Constitution. And then the comma insulates. So then, for the other laws you are talking about, which causes issues of duplicity, unless the context otherwise provides. So you now you look at the context. If you now are a kadama, I don't know, it has become sort of like in the UAE, and you're sending money to your sick mother, then you don't fall in this category, because the context otherwise provides. Such an interpretation. So this business is saying that there are other laws. Those laws were specifically meant for that situation or purpose. I can just highlight on one law. This is called the Anti-Money Laundering Act, CAP 118. You look at the long title. Mr. Chairman, don't worry, I'll be under. The long title says, an act to provide for the prohibition and prevention of money laundering. Then it goes on, mid of the long title, in order to combat money laundering activities. Then lastly, used for money laundering purposes. Then the other line, preventing money laundering. So it's a law which was meant to control and regulate illicit activities. So when I send money to my mother for medical purposes, I don't fall under this category. Even if Financial Intelligence Agency is there to regulate the conduct of money transfers. But in the act, if that money is used to sponsor Bijambia, then in this act, and a comma applies unless the context otherwise provides. It's technical. Then, Mr. Chairman, I leave that one at that, but the total effect of the act is here to create independent and comprehensive legal regime for it to conform with the existing laws. Mr. Chair, again, when you look at Article 8A of the Constitution, I just read it briefly. Sorry. Article 8A of the Constitution provides, Uganda shall be governed based on principles of national interest and common good enshrined in the national objectives and directive principles of the state policy. Parliament shall make relevant laws for purposes of giving full effect to clause 1 of this article. Then when you go to part 4 of the national, of the directives in the Constitution, national sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, the state and citizens of Uganda shall at all times defend the independence, then highlight sovereignty and territorial integrity of Uganda. The state, the state, highlight state and citizens of Uganda shall endeavor to handle national strength in political, economic, and social spheres. Then 3, the state shall endeavor to include, organize, and empower Ugandans, the Ugandan principle to build an independent and sustainable foundation. So it's my view that though Article 80 does not really specify what constitutes national interest, but when you read this together with the directives, it is clear that the state or government has the duty and the responsibility of creating a legal regime to protect national interest. So if there's interference outside, it can affect this particular principle. And it's Parliament which is vested with authority to make laws. So this business of we amend this, amend that, it is actually beyond, because now this all encompassing. It talks about so many things, and it's our duty and responsibility under the Constitution. Then, Mr. Chair and honorable members, they talked about the issue of citizenship. And this year it talks about even the context, unless the context otherwise requires. I just want to give a brief comment. The issue of citizenship is entrenched in the Constitution. It is entrenched. From Article 9 onwards, who is a citizen and duties of, up to 16, who is a citizen, and their different categories. It's not touched in the bill at all. The word foreigner should not be read ordinarily. I don't want to say literally. Like Oyomugwira. No. A citizen who becomes, when you become a citizen, and if there is any revocation, is determined by the Constitution. This bill is deeming a citizen residing out of Uganda for purposes of the Act. That's why they say in this Act, comma. The interpretation is in this Act. So for purposes of sponsoring anarchy, If you go, for example, in a European Parliament, after elections, and you give a talk, you convince people that in Uganda there is chaos, the elections are not free and fair. And there's an electoral commission which is duly constituted to handle elections. And you have a process of dissatisfaction going to court. You don't go to court. And you didn't have a tally center even to determine whether you were robbed or not, or elections were rigged. But the European Union invites Ugandan officials, including an ambassador, with resolutions that please, the elections were free, not free and fair. To the extent of people now saying, we cannot invest in a climate where there's no democracy. Then you don't want to be touched. So the law says in this act, because you did whatever you did outside, you were a foreigner or deemed a foreigner for purposes of implementing this act, which is constitutionally the duty of government.
Chair, I'm sorry to interfere with the submission.
Conclude and you'll get.
Yes, I'm concluding.
Not
Yeah, the issue where
prepare your question.
The issue where I don't agree with the bill, sir.
You will clarify on this one quite
The issue.
Honorable colleague, you conclude. Honorable Sivan.
I'm concluding. Thank you very much, Honorable Drew. Let me just conclude.
You have 2 minutes.
No,
to conclude.
Yes, I have one actually.
2 minutes. To conclude.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the only issue I have with the bill is the issue of sentencing. I think it does not follow the guidelines set in our courts. Even the fairness is a little bit disproportionate, should be proportionate. I think it must be addressed. And then lastly also, the powers of the minister must be checked somehow. The issue of cabinet. So you must have an appealable. If the minister arbitrarily did something, where do you go? Then what constitutes government policy and public interest must be defined. The informal money inflows, I think I beg to submit, Honorable Chair. It's really a passionate thing, but we need this bill for the protection of our sovereignty, and I really request this Parliament, with those few amendments, I beg to submit.
Thank you, Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi. Is the first stakeholder to appear before this committee to vote and support the bill. Doesn't he deserve an applaud? He's balancing the boat. He's balancing the boat. So, Honorable Jonathan, Honorable Okeyo, Honorable Member for Buhweju.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a few questions for Honorable Sibambi regarding his submission. The first one, by way of clarification, when you narrated the scenario that took place at the EU Parliament, were you being factual or it is a fiction? And if you are being factual, does it then occur to us as a country that whatever transpired in the EU Parliament is what has annoyed the movers of this bill, and therefore they are targeting that person, that one person who went to the EU, and they want to punish the entire country by making this proposal for us? So I want you to confirm, and if you could give us more facts around it. Regarding what I followed, the EU Parliament at that time appeared to be concerned about the conduct of elections. You have mentioned the Electoral Commission. As a lawyer, are you saying that the recently concluded elections were actually very free and fair in Uganda here? Because that was the gist. The second thing I want to ask you is, how do you reconcile the concept of sovereignty, which is the power to govern the power given to the state to govern the people of Uganda. How do you reconcile the fact that Ugandans have rejected? They say this is not sovereignty. You are purporting that you need this law to govern Ugandans, and Ugandans are saying we don't need it. So, what is your? How do you?
We don't applaud in that manner with foot stamp.
Okay, Chair. Chair, the third is about his reliance on Article 8A, which he interprets twofold: to make the law, which is not in dispute, to further the national interest. I want to ask him, you single to us